Hello, I'm Michael Learned. In early 1980, the cities of Shanghai and San Francisco signed a Friendship Cities Agreement. It was an historic occasion, the first relationship of its kind between a Chinese and an American city. That agreement resulted in a rare opportunity for a documentary film crew to live in the largest communist city in the world for an extended period of time, Shanghai, a city whose very name still conjures images of romance and intrigue. After 30 years of revolutionary discipline, for the first time, the people of Shanghai tell their story.
Of America, coming to you from Washington.
Shanghai, a metropolis of 11 million people. Half of them live in the most densely packed urban core on the planet. The other half on the 3,000 square miles of agricultural hinterland that forms the city-state of Shanghai. Second largest port in the world, gateway to the wealth of China, for nearly a century, Shanghai was an international free zone controlled by foreign powers. In 1949, Shanghai was liberated by Chinese communists. 23 years after the communist victory, China and the U.S. issued the Shanghai Communique, an agreement to normalize their relations. As China opens her doors again to foreigners, Shanghai is perhaps the best place to observe the current tensions in New China. Tension between East and West, between old and new, between capitalism and communism. Shanghai is a city with a revolutionary tradition. The young Mao Zedong attended a secret meeting here in the French concession in 1921. It was the creation of the Chinese Communist Party. A single spark can light a prairie fire, Mao wrote. In 1927, communist unions led a citywide strike. Government troops were called in to stamp out the insurrection.
Of course, I landed in Shanghai in 1926. And I'm here to tell you, we came up the Huangpu River. It must have been high tide. We were aware of the foreign gunboats anchored in the middle of the river. Shanghai had three sections: the French concession, the international settlement, and then the old Chinese city. The cities usually have been quite a refuge for people who couldn't get enough food in the countryside. And in the cold weather, because it was so cold, you just froze to death. This was a common experience to see greatly emaciated persons who had frozen to death in the cold of the winter.
Shanghai is China's leading city industrially and economically, in terms of foreign trade, and we're delighted to be back here after 3 decades of absence. But living in Shanghai in the 1980s is not going to be like living in Shanghai in the 1940s.
Nobody froze to death in the foreign settlements. Along Nanking Road, all kinds of entertainment was available. It was the Paris of the Orient, a paradise for adventurers, a setting for scenes of decadent glamour. There are shadows of the past in these old hotels, reopened in the 1980s to accommodate the new influx of foreign guests. But there is no nostalgia for the old days in Shanghai. For the Shanghainese, there was a generation who knew nothing but war.
This is the Battle of China. 1937, the fearful beginning of a new kind of war.
Bloody civil war begins again. Now the name of Mao Zedong appears prominently for the first time in news dispatches.
The State Department calls for the initiation of a new policy to counteract communist triumphs.
The United States is confronted by a situation in China which will test to the full our unity of purpose, our ingenuity, and our adherence to the basic principles which for half a century have governed our policy toward China.
The eyes of the world center on China, where Red armies storm south across the Yangtze River and threaten Shanghai. Shanghai, richest city of the great Yangtze Valley, within whose basin dwell 1/10 of the human race, continued to be the goal of refugees as well as of the Chinese Communist armies.
In the winter of 1948, there was a war between the communists and the nationalists, and the nationalists were retreating. Out of fear of this battle, I sent our 7 children to Taiwan. Now, one of our daughters is in Texas, and we have 3 sons in the USA, in New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. We haven't seen our children for 31 years.
C.T. Young and Sally Young are rehabilitated ex-capitalists, members of one of China's formerly influential families. Madame Young's father built this mansion, now a school, in the 1930s. Today, the Youngs and their servants live in another house on the old family compound. Nearly 30 years ago, the Youngs' industries, 9 textile mills and 4 flour mills, were taken over by the government.
I have tried to make use of my knowledge in the industrial management, but only it's time too short. And the Communist Party came and Shanghai was liberated in 1949. Then the workers, they are educated to learn that they are working for the government, not for the capitalists. Then efficiency rising.
Total industrial output has increased by more than 20% in 30 years. So we are proud of our achievements. We have started a 3-year program of economic readjustment. In the present situation, agriculture cannot keep up with the needs of industrial development and falls short of the growing demand for a better life.
Yet one of the problems in the Chinese economy is still that it is so dependent upon hand labor.
Yes, that's true, but it has changed a good deal. Of course, we have our problems. The damage done by Limbian and Gang of Four was enormous.
Everywhere in China, mistakes and failures are blamed on the Gang of Four. The phrase refers to the followers of the clique who controlled China's government until shortly after Mao's death in 1976. Their leader was Mao's estranged wife, Chang Qing. They took China on an ideological binge which nearly destroyed the economy. Millions of people were sent to the countryside for re-education. In Shanghai People's Square, 1 million people celebrated as the Gang of Four were ousted following Mao's death in 1976. It was the end of an era of purges and demonstrations called the Cultural Revolution.
Where in the very beginning, the Red Guards came to our house. They'd taken most of our properties away. We were kept in just one room for nearly 10 years.
Ex-capitalists were not the only people persecuted during the great proletarian cultural revolution. It affected all aspects of life: religion, economy, culture. The universities were badly damaged. A whole generation missed an education.
After the Cultural Revolution started, classes were stopped, and teachers, especially the senior faculty, were in deep trouble. My father got it very bad. He was considered a bourgeois authority, or a rightist, or a revisionist. He was sent to do manual labor in the country, although he was already around 70 years old at the time. For a long time, he was held in isolation, maybe you could call it that. He wasn't free to see people or go anywhere. He couldn't even correspond freely with my mother. And that may have been the worst part of it. When my mother died in 1970, he wasn't told about it, and he couldn't come back to see us. Yeah. But for me, it wasn't so bad. I went to the countryside to work. I went to the factory to work, and I went to a cater school for around a year. But I didn't get it too bad, no.
Shanghai 最大广播台，本台电视播音现在开始。在这次播音时间里，先播送数学系成绩，题目是让祖国来挑选。
People were labeled constantly during that time.
Yeah. Everybody could stand some labeling if the labeling is correct. You could say a person is a teacher, or a worker, or a movie producer, or a cameraman. Well, those are labels, but when the labels are incorrect, especially if they're vicious, then that's a different story.
Now, since the fall of the Gang of Four, things have changed greatly. Students feel that the Cultural Revolution wasted much of the prime of our youth, and now they are trying to make up for the 10 years that were lost. So far as a Communist Youth League is concerned, our main job is to mobilize the students to study hard to achieve the modernization of the nation.
Before I entered college, I was a farmer, you know, and I worked on the state farm for about 2 years.
You must be very happy to go to college now.
Of course I did. I'm now studying English in Shanghai Teachers College.
At the university, I'm teaching American literature. It's something quite new to them. American friends have been very generous in sending me books, but still we do have difficulty.
Professor Wan has taught his daughter to speak English. Today is her 10th birthday.
I have other ties with America. My mother was American. When my father came back, he brought mother along, and she stayed in China for the rest of her life. Very unfortunately, my mother died in 1970, so she wasn't able to see today when our two peoples are coming together again.
After 22 years in exile, Fu Song, New China's first musical prodigy, has returned. Fu Song defected to Britain in 1958 after his father was persecuted as a rightist. Fu's family tragedy ended with his parents' suicides at the height of the Cultural Revolution. Now Fu has been invited to teach a master class at the Shanghai Conservatory. The class is also significant. For the 12 years of the Cultural Revolution, Western classical music was banned in China.
There was a generation which is, say, now between 35 and 40. We were too late to go to competitions. Musically, most of them are amazingly musical. But on the other hand, they have been cut off for so long. And not just Chopin, but everything, Mozart, Beethoven. With my teaching here, you know, the atmosphere in this conservatory is wonderful. They treat music as a real learning. There is so much music in the heart of the people. They want to express themselves. Finally, they can express themselves, and so they are just bursting it.
I was in the first class at this academy, and we studied ethnic dancing. But folk dances were condemned as futile during the Cultural Revolution. Now, in the remaining years of our careers, we are again performing traditional dances. We are rehearsing for our performance of Lian Shanpu and Chen Yintang, A Love Story.
The great proletarian cultural revolution was officially declared over in 1979. As a measure of liberalization, some churches and temples, closed for a dozen years, have been permitted to reopen.
In China, the Buddhist religion, which passed from India, has a history of 2,000 years. In my case, I devote my whole life to the Buddhist religion, and I am called a master. This is the first time since before the Cultural Revolution that we have been permitted to hold this service. So even though it's raining today, many disciples come forth and pay tribute. If everyone follows the way of the Buddha, then the world will achieve peace.
I believe Buddha for many, many years, about 50 years ago, because my whole family, all believe Buddha, all Buddhist.
But for many years, it was not possible to practice your religion.
Can come here.
There used to be many more Buddhists in China. Why are there so few now?
Oh, I'm afraid that many of them were smashed during the Cultural Revolution.
Buddhism advocates that other and self are one. When one thinks of happiness, one should also think of others' happiness. So even though the ways are different, the ultimate goals of Buddhism and socialism coincide.
But many people are still skeptical about the new liberalization. A government report on religion speaks of permitting the burning of the incense stick in order to smoke out the ghosts of the past. While party propaganda urges the masses to overcome their lingering fears of repression, foreign broadcasts bring information with a different bias.
In Peking, there's been further evidence that the brief period of liberalization which followed the death of Chairman Mao has now been firmly curtailed. 3 members of the Central Committee of the Communist Party Youth League have made self-criticisms for their part in publishing an unofficial magazine last year.
The 3 edited a magazine called Peking Spring, which appeared at monthly intervals until the Democracy Hall in December.
Unsupervised contact with foreigners is not approved. Under China's Official Secrets Act, all citizens have a legal obligation to keep even generally known information from foreigners. Meetings often take place in the shadows of night. The young man seen here is a former Red Guard. He was arrested and questioned by the Public Security Bureau about his contact with the film crew.
Yes, but don't worry, no one followed me because I went out and around the block and around and back.
I hope we don't stop here. Stop over there because this is a blind light.
Yes.
Over there is dark.
Yes.
Yes.
But let's go over here, and we'll walk for a few minutes.
This man was not afraid to contact foreigners, but he did request to be filmed in shadow so as not to reveal his identity to the Chinese authorities.
In China, whenever or wherever you go, you have to do something with foreign guests, or even with Chinese, you have to get permission. And I told them that I myself wanted to do something for the improvement of the understanding between American people and Chinese people. And me too. want to get a good chance to practice English, since I'm a student of English. But in China, we have to get permission to do anything. We're not like you.
Chinese people are quite confident that stability and unity were lost, because that is what demanded by the people.
Even though you tell them all the truth, they will turn a deaf ear to you, or they don't believe what you said.
Well, I would advise our friend America not to pay much attention to democracy war, because there are a bunch of people who don't have much faith in anything.
You see, the door of China is open, but not fast enough or wide enough.
Is it very difficult to tell the truth in China these days?
Well, in newspapers, there's a lot of articles encouraging people to tell the truth. And still, according to many facts, there are some people are still telling lies, I should say.
China's newspapers are enormously powerful in shaping public values and mobilizing political forces. 2 of the Gang of 4 were editors of the nationally distributed Liberation Daily of Shanghai. Their successor is Mr. Wang Wei.
从1967年1月，这个四人帮在上海夺权以后这个《解放日报》呢就被他们控制了。
In January 1967, when the Gang of 4 seized power in Shanghai, they also controlled the Liberation Daily. At the beginning of the seize of power, the Gang of 4 used the newspapers to control public opinion and influence the masses. The Communist Party has traditionally used the newspapers to spread Marxism and Leninism. I understand that newspapers in capitalist countries are run by private corporations, and their goal is to make profits. As newspapermen in China, we are all propagandists of the party and the state. We fight against the people's enemies, and we educate the people.
在北京呢，喂，你打错了，打错了，我是《解放日报》。在北京呢。
Actually, our goal is the same as the government's, that is, to serve the people.
I like my motherland, and I hope China will become a strong country, and every Chinese citizen will get a better life, enjoy a high living standard. Perhaps Shanghai people has the privilege to see more things, to get some new ideas from the other countries, because it's a big city and have a lot of foreign friends. It's easier for Shanghai people to understand what's going on all over the
You're in
world.
tune with the world when you tune to the Voice of America. And here it is, another Friday morning in the life of the world, and you're on with us.
It's an historical irony that the segregation of Chinese and foreigners has been perpetuated in the People's Republic. Guards and security police keep Chinese outside looking in at stores and hotels for foreigners. The man on the left had never visited a hotel for foreigners. In keeping with party discipline, he was accompanied by the cadre, or responsible person, from his school unit to bear witness that no state secrets were discussed.
We don't think so. We can do as we like. We can do as I like. So we are very glad to help the foreigner if they ask me to. Yesterday, I helped you to do some shopping. So you see?
We really have more freedoms since the downfall of Gang 4.
Mr. Chen, what happened to you during the Cultural Revolution?
During Cultural Revolution, I went to the factory to be an ordinary worker. My work, I used to be a welder. It's a hard job.
But now you see, you can come to visit us where we stay. Can we come to visit you in your homes?
Oh, in this question, I can't.
If both of us have got enough time, and it's convenient for both of us,
not convenient. We
will try to arrange. We'll try to make an arrangement for that.
How does it have to be arranged?
No, I think it's convenient.
One family did invite the film crew to their home. They felt they had nothing to hide.
I was born in the year of liberation. In a Chinese saying, I was born under the red flag and grew up in a new society. I went to work in the copper factory when I was 18. After the liberation in 1949, there was a housing shortage, so other families moved in with us. We used to own this house. Now we have one room, and Mama shares the kitchen. In 1957, Mao made a speech and said, "Let 100 flowers blossom, let 100 schools of thought contend." In 1958, the people who spoke out were arrested. I was teaching high school physics then, but at that time, if anyone should accuse you of being counter-revolutionary, then you were a counter-revolutionary. They came at night while I was sleeping. We had a mass trial. We had no defense. There were about 2,000 others. We were sent in cattle cars to Shanghai. That's about 3,000 miles northwest of here. During the 10 years of the Cultural Revolution, there were more than 220,000 cases in Shanghai in which people were wronged, misjudged, or framed as counter-revolutionaries. More than 90% of the cases have been reviewed, with many trumped-up charges redressed. By now, those who were wrongly persecuted to death have been exonerated. Posthumous exoneration is very important because it affects the reputation of the family of the accused. I'm 68 years old now. I was allowed to return last year. I hadn't seen my family for 20 years. Because of our poor family background, we've had difficulties in terms of education and advancement. But I like to study. If I can study advanced technology abroad, then I will be able to contribute to building a strong China. Last year, my uncle in America sent us all the necessary papers for my study abroad. We took these papers to the Public Securities Bureau, and we haven't heard from them since. It could be that we still have a bad background because my father's incident is still in the files.
This problem is not unusual. Every Chinese must report to a work unit.
What kind of things do you require permission from a unit to do?
I mentioned to move a house, move your home, to change job, to take exams, to go to university, and to marry, to travel out.
To travel even within China?
Yeah, within China, but other places. Because with a letter of introduction, you can get hotel accommodation.
So it's impossible to book a hotel room in another city without permission from your unit?
It's not called a permission, it's just identity.
上海街头啊，我北京街头有少数的请自己作为民主人士的人。
On the streets of Shanghai and some streets of Peking, there are a few people who advocate democracy for themselves. As representatives of the government, we are concerned about these developments.
他们觉得他自己呢是民主，其实呢，他只尊他民主，不尊别人民主。
It would not be advantageous to maintaining order in this society if we were to allow their activities to continue.
If you do something bad, you will be asked to write self-criticism. And usually the first one may not be full enough. They would ask you to write a second one, you know, to confess your bad ideas deep in your heart, you know, to confess everything. It takes some time, you know, several days, several weeks, several months. Now we already have quite enough freedom of speech, I think. But if you speak against the party, then you become an enemy. And you won't have the freedom of speech, no freedom of anything.
We hear also much talk about the democracy movement in China today.
是什么样子呢？对，你说我们是很赞成民主的。
In our understanding, democracy means the masses decide. But with so many opinions from all over, we have to centralize them. We cannot get into a governmentless society.
What would happen to someone who did try to
say something against the party or socialism? You'll be criticized if it's just some words. You know? But if you stir other people, you speak to lots of people and try to rouse, to stir up some problem. And then you could be punished according to the law. It is quite severe, the law, but it's very good now we have the law.
This year, our new criminal code took effect. It guarantees the rights to a public trial, a full defense, and the right of appeal. In our country, we had about 2,000 years under feudalism. The rule of law and the rule of man has always been in conflict. But last year, it was suggested that we emphasize the independence of the rule of law to ensure the modernization of China. In our country, the ruling class is the people. Therefore, the law reflects the wishes of the people. We must use the law to ensure an orderly society.
从侦查开始到采取主料。
This is the first trial ever filmed by foreigners in the People's Republic of China. It took place in the Hongqiu District Court of Shanghai. The two defendants were accused of stealing fluorescent light bulbs from the factory in which they work. The defense pleaded for leniency, claiming that the minds of the young men had been twisted by the Gang of Four. The judge replied with a one-year sentence.
24层语音时光灯管2只，找归律师为被告人李继光的
비운잉.
The ideological excesses of the past have been replaced with pragmatic policies for modernization by the year 2000. Foreign entrepreneurs are busy with schemes to exploit the improvement in U.S.-China relations.
You're asking me right now what the total business situation, the contacts, the procedures are to get a contract signed, to get production, so forth, whatever goods you want to buy and get out of the country. Correct?
It seems like a good question.
Okay. Number one, the first thing it takes is you don't come in here and you don't go in on a whirlwind and you don't become an American and being very hyper, very active. You have to understand the Chinese way of doing things. You have to understand their tempo of business.
Mr. Lee, to you.
Saluta, in Italian.
Oh, saluta means.
Okay.
Right?
Don't expect to come in one night and say, bingo, I have found everything I want, I'm going to buy everything, and I'm going home.
Oh. I think we would like to welcome Mass and Company to send a group or set up an office in Shanghai.
You can give the best regards to the man in charge of Macy's in 2 days. He will be here. Mr. Finkelstein.
Finkelstein. 这个 Finkelstein 先生呢，他是我们美思公司主管。
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice meal.
No trouble at all.
It takes a lot of, how shall I put it, rapport to work with the people, to appreciate the people, to not only work with a man who is in charge of a branch of some type of corporation in China, but to also get down into the basics, to work with the artists, okay? You want my son in your carpet factory?
哎，你是不是希望我那个儿子到你们那个地毯厂去？哦，欢迎啊
He'd pick too many rugs.
那么他到时候把那个地毯拿的太多了。
Maybe in 4 years down the road, the business will become very big, very profitable, and in a sense, very enjoyable to American people. That's what it takes.
好，谢谢，谢谢各位。Thank you. Yeah.
To the friendship and to what we talked about tonight, may it all come true. May we all work together and enjoy a great business success between two companies who work together and enjoy each other.
And also to the better cooperation between Massey Company and Shanghai Automobile Products.
The future lies ahead.
Right.
China has actually opened up for business.
Is this the coming of capitalism to the People's Republic?
I would say so. Probably the coming of capitalism, Chinese style. In the case of China, it has many, many other additional wrinkles. Sometimes you are not sure if you are negotiating with the right party. How do you do business in a country where the rules are being set up as you go along? It was only until recently that we initiated diplomatic relationship with China. And trade relationship is not quite normal yet.
The more interaction we have, the better we understand each other, the fewer restrictions we would have to place on each other. And I say on each other because there are reciprocal restrictions.
Every far-sighted American can see that the combination of latent resources of China and the creative energy of 900 million people will create such opportunities that are truly unparalleled in the history of mankind.
The Chinese society is progressively becoming more open as they see that it is in the interest of both countries to have a greater degree of openness, and I think this will impact on the countryside and on the people as well.
There is no question about the leadership's commitment and the people's commitment to modernization. The key is not to cause too much imbalance and disruptions.
The people of China, the majority, overwhelming majority of Chinese people, have full confidence in our leadership, in our system, and in our future.
If China wants to become a strong country, China must learn something new from foreign countries to get new things, to get new ideas. So my personal feeling is that it's not enough for the government to deal with foreign government. The ordinary Chinese people will have to keep close in touch with foreign people so that they can learn more.
Can there really be socialism in China under the current situation?
I think socialism will be possible in the future, and communism will be possible in the farther future. I think it will be long time from now, because in communism, all the people should have very high morality. And besides, in the communist society, there should be plenty of wealth. And these two conditions are necessary. And we haven't had these two conditions.
Presents Across the Land. It's 13 hours, Greenwich.
A 1,350-meter long
BBC Peking correspondent of a 2,000.
But communism or no communism, the old beliefs live on.
Other projects included a 2,600-kilowatt hydroelectric power station.
Although the official position is that there is complete freedom of religion, this is manifestly not the case.
In 1956, after the Cultural Revolution,
and no amount of Chinese propaganda to the contrary.
Converged into the Peking Association of the Blind
Chinese
and
leaders said the 1980s will become even more turbulent and fraught with crises.
Producing 14 million radio
An unknown number of Chinese Roman Catholic priests were accused of...
Following a speech by Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping, in which he criticized the World Postal Movement, he suggested that in future postal should be banned altogether.
On VOA's This Week.
Now, a summary of the news.
In Shanghai, the government has issued a directive to ban foreign documentary films. Chinese citizens have been advised not to mix with foreigners. These announcements appear to signal a new campaign to deflate the pro-America feeling that has been building since the normalization of U.S.-China relations.